What is up YouTube, Scarido here, and welcome to another reaction video. So today we are doing The Devil Lady, Curse of the Full Moon, horror stories animated, and this is by Urban Legends Animated, so let's get into it. The Devil Lady, yep, Devil Lady Night, Curse of the...
This story took place in the poor countryside. One morning, on a big banyan tree in the middle of the village, hung a dangling dead body on a
I've noticed a few videos that I've reacted to recently have had hangings in them.
They were all there to listen in disbelief about the death of a young girl. Everyone said that the girl was murdered. Suddenly, at the end of the line, a man burst out and fell on his knees. He cried bitterly. Grief was evident on the elderly man's face.
Well, he doesn't look that old,
but it turned out that the corpse was his daughter. The man claimed that his daughter was killed by the Devil Lady, for he had seen branches of the white willow. The night before, as usual, the girl walked home alone after work. She had to cross a dark, empty street from work.
Not exactly the safest of things.
So she did not want to bother her husband for a pickup. She walked home, exhausted from working overtime. Lost in thought, what appeared at the end of the road made her jump. In the darkness, she saw an old lady from afar. She guessed that this old woman was from the neighboring village. She probably had senile dementia and therefore got lost.
Somehow I don't think so.
She then approached to ask questions.
Yep.
As she got closer, she had the chance to see the old woman clearly. Somehow, she just stood still by the tree. She spread her fingers apart and started counting them.
Okay.
She did not understand why she was so absorbed in her counting. She called out softly to her, but the old woman did not hear. The old lady was so focused that she did not realize she'd been standing there for a while. She silently observed the strange behavior of this old woman. Suddenly, the old woman's face turned dark. Her body exuded a ghost-like mystery.
Well, you would have just walked away by then, but there we go.
Numbers 7 and 8. So much so, it gave anyone hearing goosebumps. Then, counting to 9, the expression on her face somehow changed. She looked sad and a little disappointed.
Okay.
She repeated the number 9 dozens of times, making the girl look even more terrified. She softly asked what she was counting for.
Okay, that mouth movement needs to change in the animation because that looks awful.
Because it was late. It would be very dangerous for her to hang out alone here. When hearing the young girl's voice, the old woman looked up slightly. She looked at her with delight, as if she had just found a lost item. She looked at her for a long moment, then told herself the number 10 was right here.
Okay.
Then the odd lady looked down again, counting the numbers of fingers on her hand. But this time, she counted happily. On the number 10, she shouted out joyfully. Under the bright yellow light of the moon, the old woman's face appeared with pale skin and white eyes. Seeing this, the young girl screamed in horror. Now she was sure the old woman was not an ordinary person.
Well, that was clear from the get-go.
She was terrified and fell on the ground. Her face began to sweat. She looked at the old woman with frightened eyes. The old woman, known as the Devil Lady, did not care about the girl. She continued to spread her hands out and counted her fingers over and over.
Okay.
This time, she counted more slowly and stopped at number 10 with her pinky. After counting, she chuckled.
Okay.
Spreading her hands out in front of her, she exclaimed happily that she had found the number 10 that she had been looking for. The girl was still on the ground, trembling. The old lady turned her back and walked into the tree. Once she reached the tree, she glanced up at the girl and smiled happily. The woman's laughter echoed throughout the neighborhood, but no one heard it. Only the young girl felt a chill down her spine. The old woman then disappeared without a trace.
Okay.
The young girl leaned slightly to see which direction the old lady had headed, but strangely enough, she was gone. She stopped to sit up, looking for a way to get up quickly, but her feet were suddenly numb. When she finally stood up, she took a deep breath. She knew she had just encountered a demon.
Probably possessed too now.
She turned and ran away. While running, she screamed loudly for help. However, that night, the surroundings were awfully creepy. Silence was all around her. On this bright, full moon night, the girl cried bitterly while running through the village. The next morning, people found her body hung on a large banyan tree in the middle of the village, where the old woman had once appeared. After hearing the story, the villagers could not hide their horror. It turned out that the legend of the Lady Devil was real.
Well,
On
that's
every
pretty
full
clear
moon,
now.
She reappears under the willow tree, waiting for young girls.
Which doesn't
The
sound
story
creepy at all.
began in ancient times, when the Japanese fascists invaded and occupied the whole village. They were ruthless, plundering and killing people. Eager for women, they set a rule that took women and young girls from the village. One day, a beautiful girl who just turned 16 years old was forced by the villagers to be handed over to the Japanese.
I say, that's a bit debatable
This
from that
poor
side.
girl,
Okay,
who
that
showed
actually looks
extreme
better.
fear, kept looking around and calling for her mother. But her mother was also locked up by the villagers and nowhere to
Coincidental
be
again?
found. Out of cowardice, the village youths mercilessly surrendered the poor girl to them. The lead commander looked at her body for a long time, then softly asked her to look up. The girl was begging, asking him to spare her life. But the more he heard her moan, the more he became
Yeah,
delighted.
that mouth movement is not good for this
He let
animation
out
style.
an evil laugh, and then he sent 2 soldiers to escort the girl to a hidden place to satisfy them.
Yeah,
The villagers
that's-
came together to see. Everyone heard the girl crying bitterly, but no one could help. After a while, there was no longer the sound of the girl screaming.
she's
Only a few
screaming.
sobs were left.
I think something went wrong in
Then
the editing there.
There was the sound of gunshots. The most heartbroken person was her mother. She was desperate to know if her daughter had been killed by them. Missing children gradually became an obsession of the old mother. She kept asking for her girl back. Everyone was broken by the mother's situation, but because the enemies were too ferocious, no one dared to resist.
That's
Years
unfortunate.
went by, and people saw her as a lost soul, wandering everywhere around the village. By then, she had become crazy, always asking for the return of her daughter. Then one day, she hanged herself on a large willow tree in the middle of the village. The same tree where the 10th young girl could be found hanging that morning. Her soul was deposited into the trunk of the big tree. She then casted a barbaric curse in order to take revenge on both the villagers and their descendants.
Well, I'm not surprised with
Every
that.
full moon, she would hang young girls from the old tree stump as a warning to the old feud. On that same tree where dead people hung grew pure white willow flowers. And strangely enough, no one takes care of them, but the flowers are still blooming day by day very well.
Well, sometimes flowers do just
After
bloom.
the girl's story this morning, the whole village decided to burn down
Okay,
the big tree,
that is a deliberate face in
hoping
the
to
fire.
find a way to save lives of the remaining girls in the village. The fire was burning in the night, and
Yeah,
the smoke
you can
emitted
see a face
strong
in the fire.
stench. Maybe because the tree was old, or maybe, just maybe, because of the flesh and blood of the dead. After the tree burned off all its leaves, a white smoke came after, perhaps symbolizing the soul of the old mother. Years went by and no more girls were captured. Perhaps it was because the tree had burned down, or because the last girl that she had been looking for was found.
Okay, so the only thing that I can really say is that the mouth moving style really does not suit that animation style at all. That's just a bit of a criticism from me. I do have more of their videos to react to, but yeah, I mean, the mouth movement just doesn't work for me, unfortunately. But that was The Devil Lady, Curse of the Full Moon, Horror Stories Animated by Urban Legends and Animated, or Animations, whichever one it was, and I will see you in the next one.